challenge. But then again, last week I was in Atlanta for 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, and New York before that, and I did get to Chicago for the deep freeze. So it's so nice to be in San Diego. And I was riding in the cab last night, coming around the corner here to the hotel, and I look over there to my left, and there's Mission Bay. And I made a comment to the people I was riding with, oh, I sailed in the college nationals here 20 years ago. And then I got this kind of 20? Oh no, excuse me, 42 years ago. Anyway, time goes by rapidly. Well, first of all, thank you, U.S. Sailing, for putting this together, and thank all of you for attending. I think it's important, and all the people that can make a difference in the sport of sailing are here in this room. So together we can advance our sport and go a long way. And there's two great objectives here this week. One is to learn from all our 70 presenters, and two is the networking. And Tom, I really like your comment. Talk to people you don't know. I thought that was really good, and there's lots of us that are going to learn. And a number of people here, about 600 people and a couple hundred different organizations, very impressive. And as I'm sure most of you appreciate, I follow sailing closely, and this past year, 2013, was remarkable for American sailing. Consider this. American sailors won the Star World Championship, Johnny McLaughlin, the Etchells World Championship, Marvin Beckman, the Melgas 24 World Championship, Brian Porter, the Melgas 32 World Championship, Jason Carroll, the TP52s, the Lightning World Championships, the Moss, the kiteboards. American sailors at the international stage are doing great, and we should be all proud. So we have our leaders, but what about the rest of us? How do we bring it up and get more people there? Well, the great thing about our sport and the organizations that you represent is that we are the ones that provide access to the sport. We're the gateway through education, through available facilities. How do we make it affordable? How do we get time out there on the water? There are big issues that we have to do, and that's what we need to work on. And sailing organizations, in my view, are really important. Every one of you together can get people on the water, whether it's sailing at home or away, or the education that we put together. And there's so much available. I mean, the great thing about our sport is it connects to generations. Think about it. We get to know our grandparents, parents, our peers, our kids, and our grandkids. 5 generations in a lifetime. And what other sport can bring everybody together at the same time as the sport of sailing? Very cool. And in a lot of ways, it's a miracle that our yacht clubs and our sailing schools and community sailing centers exist. How hard is it to put these facilities together in this over-regulated environment that we seem to live today? And for that reason, with the water being so precious, we all have to work hard to make sure that we're looking forward, working on our long-range plan, and continually making it better. And when you do, people arrive and show up. Now, I also, in recognizing how great some sailors in America have done over the past year, it also reminds me of some fun things I've seen around the waterfront recently. I did a lecture a few weeks ago, and some Opties were out sailing. It's cold out. It's January, and I love the name of this boat this kid had for his Optimist. He called it Pessimist. There's somebody that's going everywhere. And then my friend Judd Smith, racing his J70 in Key West a couple weeks ago, named his beloved boat Africa. I'm thinking, man, why Africa? You been to some safari or something? And he said, oh, no, it's an acronym, stands for another freaking race boat I can't afford. I thought that was... And then I think it was a couple winters ago, I went to a party, and this elderly gentleman had decided, can you believe this, to retire from sailing. He was 88 years old. And I went over to the fireplace to warm up, and there on the fireplace is this brick of metal. And I'm looking at the brick of metal, and there's words. There's engraving, and the engraving says Yacht Racing 1946-2010. He'd taken every trophy he'd won in his life, melted them down, and put them right up there on the mantle. So when you really wonder how important it is to win races, there it is, Yacht Racing 1946-2010. After one of the America's Cup races, I was coming out of the compound, the television compound, and Kenny and I had done the show, which you'll hear from Kenny in a little bit. And this couple came up to me. Shannon, they were from Wisconsin. Hey, are you Gary Jobson? Yep, that's me. Hey, we're enjoying your broadcast. Well, thank you very much. You know, we never sailed before, they tell me. Wow. Well, it's nice to see you here in San Francisco. And because of your broadcast, we got so enthused, we bought a boat. Thank you. We're doing our job. Now, you never know when inspiration's going to come along, and I clearly remember being a 19-year-old and this huge regatta was coming to Barnegat Bay, New Jersey, where I grew up. The regatta was the 420 National Championship. I'd borrowed a boat, practiced for about a week, had never been in a 420. 3 days before the regatta, a good friend of mine, who's driving an ice cream truck for the summer, said, hey, we can make a fortune. There's a rock concert coming up. Let's go to the rock concert. We'll make some money. We can hear the music. So I had a dilemma. 420 Nationals, rock concert selling ice cream. So I went to my father. Dad, what do you think? You can go to a rock concert any week of your life, he says, but the 420 Nationals only comes to Barnegat Bay once in a lifetime. I took his advice. I think I ended up 22nd or something in the 420 Nationals, and as it turned out, ended up missing Woodstock. So you never know. You never know when those great moments are going to arrive. Well, anyway, whether you're at a club or one of our community sailing centers or even a sailing school, every organization here is very different. I'm doing a film and a book on Barnegat Bay, which celebrates its 100th anniversary of the Barnegat Bay Yacht Racing Association. And it astounds me how on Saturday, everybody's out there with an equal chance of winning, and yet how different all these clubs are. And clubs are a little bit tribal, and it's emotional. And there's a great disparity in their usage. But people like belonging, being part of society. And what is it about sailing that's so great? It's pretty simple, really. It's the freedom to get away from land, to spend the time with your best friends, to share the same passion as you, to get out there in the water. And when you do that, I think our sport grows. Now, I would not feel good if I didn't bring some video along today. So I brought 4 films. Katie's going to kill me because they're all 30 minutes each. No, they're all 2 minutes each. So I'm going to lay some films in with my message here. So here's a little look at our sport, and just think about getting out on the water. So this is nighttime on the Chicago Mac. Outside the door. Think about it, around the world, non-stop by herself. that's my little early morning waker-upper that we're talking about sailing. So all of us face some really big issues in our sport. Aging memberships at clubs. I keep trying to be under that average age, but it's not working out so well. Declining participation on the water, regulatory restrictions, environmental regulations, handicap access, something that we got to be very cognizant of. Insurance issues, we'll hear more from that from our friends from Gallery. Litigation that seems to be infecting our sport. How do we set priorities? What about reciprocity between clubs and organizations? What should we do about refurbishing the club? Should we fix it up or leave it the way it is? What about budgets? How do we pay for all this and have good governance and serve our membership? And what do we do about properties? Should we buy more contiguous properties? And what about leases? How do we extend those for clubs that don't own their property? And when you listen to this list, you realize there's really no easy answers. This is hard. And the way to get answers is to be here, to listen and spread out and talk to others and study the trends and procedures at peer yacht clubs. Because some of the things that you face, others have faced too. And how do you overcome it? Well, look around and you can find some answers. And one way to do it is simply start with one big success. And when you have something that's successful, that gives you encouragement and the confidence to continue on. And it takes time to make things happen. I'm a big believer that you make the list, you put it in a priority, and then chip away at the list one thing at a time. And if you do that, you will make good progress. But remember this, no matter what you do, whatever the issue is, whatever's on the table, the same 6 guys that are at a bar will be against it, and they're at every yacht club in the world. Every yacht club I've ever visited, those same 6 guys are on the bar stool, and they're against whatever it is. So the way to handle them is to go right on past and get buy-in and spend time marketing and talking about what's going on. And some solutions, well, if there's any fires going on, put those out immediately, whatever that is. Set priorities, and like I said, I'm a big believer in long-range plans and looking ahead, and make the big list. Many of them you can't get to for a long time. My father was a commodore of a club, I think it was 1961, 62, and he passed away a few years ago, and I was looking through his papers, and I noticed that there was a big issue at the club of whether to have a swimming pool or not. 2 years ago, I spoke at that yacht club, and somebody in the audience said, "Mr. Jobson, what do you think about putting a pool in?" My answer, for 50 years you've been debating it. I'd say, go ahead and build the pool. They did, and it's going well. So I felt really good that I helped you get that finally done, that they got the pool out there. And to get things done, you got to get lots of people involved, listen carefully, get buy-in, and Tom, I liked your word there, collective wisdom. People working together, and collective wisdom leads to collective action. And questionnaires, surveys, publish results, carefully write that mission statement. All these things help solve some of these easy problems. All right, next video. So last summer we had a nifty regatta up in San Francisco. Let's take a little look at this. And Kenny's going to show you a little bit more in a few minutes. flag that Stan Honey put down on the water there. Very cool. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that little piece. So, how do we get word out there? Well, let me give you some projects to think about at your organization. First of all, a lot of this, once you have your plan in place, as we discussed here a little bit, and the list that you'd like to do, and you resolve that you're going to chip away at it because it's hard to do everything at once, you got to sell it. Communications. Have a paid person work on communications. I'm a big believer in newsletters. Of course, we have the question, should it be in print or should it be electronic? And there's a discussion coming up about that here over, I think tomorrow that's going to happen. Use the website. Keep updating it. I will say, Jack Gerhardt, you and the team have done a good job updating and upgrading the U.S. Sailing website and made it a lot easier to use with a lot of relevant information. Very cool. Send out email reminders, but not too often. I like the New York Yacht Club. It does it once a week. Perfect. Not 4 times a day, once a week. I got it. Really helps out. Work on external communications. Let people know what you're doing, particularly with good deeds. Invite non-members to your club or city officials to events. Take lots of pictures, easy to do. Print lots of names. Keep historical archives, something I'm very passionate about. That tradition is really important in our sport of sailing. And preserving that tradition with what people thought, did, achieved, who was part of it, makes a big difference in the long term. And when you do this, everybody feels good about being part of it, and new members will come along. I also encourage organizations to have some kind of annual signature event, something special that goes on every year that everybody can rally around, gets lots of volunteers engaged, and builds prestige. And there are heroes in our sport. The laundry list of people that I mentioned in the beginning who won world championships last year, they're good deeds. Let's make heroes out of them. Make them feel good and support them. I'm also a big believer, and I've certainly put my name on the line over the years, that every sailing organization should host one charity event, something outside of the sport of sailing. The goodwill created with communities, that you're doing something for society at large, whatever it might be, will come back in spades. So I think it's very important to do that, and goodness knows there's a lot of worthy charities out there. Community access is essential to our sport. Community sailing, our sailing schools, you are the gateway. That leads to yacht club memberships. That leads to buying new boats. That leads to getting more people out there on the water. I can't emphasize how critical that is and how important your work is, so thank you for doing that. I'm also a big believer that sailing organizations can do well to have a fleet of boats that's provided for people. Think about it. You're 25 years old. You're out of college. You might have some college loans. You want to build a family, and yet you want to go sailing. Boy, is it hard to own a boat. But you're willing to go sailing with people, or you have a short period of time to get out there on the water. So if an organization has a fleet of boats that's available for a nominal fee, there they are sitting there, you will get people out on the water. And I think my favorite road in the world, I'm being facetious, is the New Jersey Turnpike. I tried to count up how many times I've been up and down that road. I think 600 times in my lifetime. But every time I drive up and down the Jersey Turnpike, I will find cars with Yacht Club Burgees on those bumpers. Have some pride. Fly the Burgee. Put your stickers on the boat. I love seeing the U.S. Sailing stickers all over. Put it on the clothing. And people see that stuff. It makes a difference. All right, I'm going to show a little clip of some yacht clubs. You don't have to, you can keep the music, but not so loud. I'm going to talk through this one. And as I said, the Barnegat Bay Yacht Racing Association is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and there's 13 clubs on the bay. The Bay Head Yacht Club was literally destroyed last year from Hurricane Sandy, and they're rebuilding at the present time, and it kicks off. Metedeconk Yacht Club, wonderful place that's been rebuilt a few times. And it's just got lots of young people sailing all the time. Sadly, the Shore Acres Yacht Club was completely destroyed by Sandy, and now the members have to rebuild the club. But they saved the deck and the porch. They're still serving beer. I grew up at this little club, Beechwood Yacht Club in New Jersey, littered with sunfish all over the place. Beechwood's club burned down about 30 years ago, and they built that nifty building, and it's been thriving since 1947. Lavalette Yacht Club on Barnegat Bay is a wonderful place and has hosted many national championships over the years. Normandy Beach, it's recovering from Sandy. It's looking pretty sandy there. Eventually they'll get the boats back out in the yard. And as I go through these shots, like Island Heights Yacht Club, notice how different all the shapes are, the construction, the layout. Many of these clubs, like Island Heights, originally were built over the water. Manahawkin Yacht Club brags that and rightfully so, they've had 10 Olympians come from that yacht club, that small place. Seaside Park is a place where it all ends after a summer season, and if you win the final race, you get a flag with a rooster on it. So the name of my book is Chasing Roosters in honor of that flag. Ocean Gate, the gateway. They had to raise it up a little bit, smart move. And Manasquan River Yacht Club, they got their pool. Nice work. Don't have to argue anymore, and people use the pool. Yep, it's a good thing. And the Pine Beach Yacht Club, it was right next to Admiral Farragut Academy, and Alan Shepard, believe it or not, the astronaut, went there. And Tom's River Yacht Club, where I spent 5 years teaching sailing many years ago, and believe it or not, I'm still a member. So anyway, a little look at very diverse clubs. It's about 10 miles from one to the next, 13 in a very small region. So at your club, very important to make it look good. It's a community. It's a home away from home. Paintings, trophies, models should be displayed. Honor past Commodores in the world and on the wall. A library, very important. And I got some titles to add to it. That's my only advertisement of the day. And of course, you have to have a good bar. If you can believe this, I think that I have been in 500 yacht club bars in my lifetime. 500. And I think the best one's at the Bayview Yacht Club in Detroit. I like that bar a lot. Oh, we got some Bayview people here. You know, my quick side story. One time I was doing one of the America's Cup shows, and Jim Kelly, my partner, is always bragging about some restaurant. I didn't realize he was always getting free dinners at that restaurant. So I mentioned Jerome at the bar at Bayview one time on the air, and I've never paid for a drink since, every time I'm at Bayview. So I got what Jim is working on. But anyway, we want to make these places special. And I mentioned the contiguous property acquisition. I believe anytime property comes up alongside your facility, you should go get it and add to it, even if you're not sure exactly what you're going to do with it at that time. But these properties are really important. And that big renovation, I mean, poor Barnegat Bay. Can you imagine 13 clubs, every one of them suffered severe damage from Hurricane Sandy. And yet, last summer, a full roster of sailing went on, and all the clubs are being rebuilt. And, you know, it's a tough crowd that's able to pull all that off and overcome adversity. And Katrina down in Southern Yacht Club in New Orleans, I got a tour 6 weeks after Katrina went through of that devastated area. And I spoke at Southern about 3 weeks ago, and boy, is it back. They built a new club, it's doing well, and that takes the resolve of the members to be able to do that. So the big renovation, preparing for the inevitable storms, problems, how do you pay for all this? It'd be nice to just write a check, but it's not so easy. So you got to plan these things out. Loans for members, bonds, donations, spreading out costs, volunteer work, all helps to make these things happen. Membership, huge issue these days. Though I don't think there are too many yacht clubs in America that have full membership rosters at this time. And the way to do it is to go out and recruit. And I've learned over the years that peers do best recruiting peers. When you're 64, it's hard to talk a 24-year-old into it. But if you're 24, you can get your friends to do it. So anyway, putting a group together and getting people of various ages to go after the people of their own age seems to work out. And have your list. Why should you invest in being a member of this club? Well, here's what you get in return. And when you look at the list, my goodness, what a great value. And of course, you got to try and make all of this as affordable as you possibly can. And if you do run races,
Well, do a good job with race management and race committee. People love it when races are run well or the best you possibly can, depending on the conditions. And that doesn't happen by accident. You've got to have somebody in charge, a race manager and a committee, maybe a paid employee along the way to make all of that work. Now, I mentioned a fleet of boats. So my next little film clip are some fleets of boats that I think you should consider for your yacht club. They go fast. Here we go. I'll talk you through it. So we're going to start out here on Lake Mendota. This is a hydrofoil that the U.S. Navy experimented with, and the thing could go 25 knots. Impressive. And then Crossbow in 1975 in Weymouth, England, where the Olympics took place, they got this contraption going 36 knots. Would your club like a fleet of those? Then in the 1980s, Russell Long's long shot, he got this hydrofoil thing going 43. Yellow Pages in 1993, kind of a proa, wing, sail, something or other, 46.5 knots. The America's Cup boats, the fastest I saw last summer was about 49 knots. That's eclipsed by another shot of me here. Windsurfers, 51 knots, and then you have kiteboarding. American Robbie Douglas set the new world speed record. And I'd like to see kiteboards in the Olympics someday. I asked him, does it hurt? And he said, jump out of your car at 55 miles an hour. That's what it feels like. Anyway, here's his record-breaking run. American Robbie Douglas set a world speed record at 55 nautical miles per hour, of a distance you have to do for exactly a kilometer, whatever that is. On NBC, I refused to talk about metrics. It was all yards, miles per hour. That's a better landing. And here's the fastest sailboat ever, and this is the one I think your club should get for a fleet of boats. It's called Vestas Sail Rocket. They experimented a little bit, but at first it didn't work out too well. Reminds me of the guy that did a lecture on why the X-15 was so important. He said, you know why we call it the X-15? No, why was that? Because the first 14 didn't work. Anyway, here's a record-breaking run. Like I said, you've got to go this distance for 1 kilometer. And a foiling proa wing sail with one skipper up on, I think it's the windward side, GoPro cameras all over the place. And this is the record-breaking run, 65 nautical miles per hour. Pretty impressive. Who wants to sign up for a ride? Better yet, how about getting 10 of these at your club? All right, well, I hope you enjoyed those little clips. Thank you. So I'll pass my notes on to Jack and Katie, and they can put my outline on the U.S. Sailing website, make it so if you didn't get everything down, you'll be able to find it a little bit later. All right, one last piece of business for me is introduce the next speaker, Kenny Reed. I got to know Kenny when he was a young man. I remember watching Sailing Sunfish, and he was a young kid. I was probably about, 10 years older, and there's a guy to pay attention. Well, we sure did. At BU, he was College Sailor of the Year, and his brother a few years later was College Sailor of the Year. So Kenny, you taught your brother pretty well where to go to college and how to do. And I will tell you, for those of you around the country, there is no more passionate guy that loves his Red Sox, his Patriots, his Bruins, and even the Celtics these days. And Kenny has raced around the world in the Volvo Ocean race. He's won world championships in J24s and Etchells, and is currently president of North Sails. So, if you're thinking of the new sail, I'm sure he'll be happy to help you out. But where Kenny and I really intersected was this summer during the America's Cup. We got teamed up together. He had a horrible spot in a booth looking at TV screens, and I got to be underwater, which actually I didn't want to do, but as it turned out, it was a pretty good, and we had great fun. And Kenny, come on up here with me for a minute. Kenny Reed. So I'll just start with one quick story about broadcast this summer during the America's Cup, and I'm sure you appreciate we would go back and forth and compare notes, and it worked out pretty well. And Of course, the regatta I thought was pretty darn boring initially. With one boat, I mean, I never knew this, that the way to win sailboat races is to simply set a course and go around by yourself and you win the race. I never knew that. And that's the way that America's Cup, and then when you did have two boats, they were separated by 50 or 60 boat lengths of 5 minutes. But boy, did that story change as time went on. And one of the days that the wind, I kept telling John Craig, let me hold the tape measure. 23.0 knots of, it just doesn't seem like enough. But one day they had too much wind, they canceled. So I suggested to Kenny on the air, hey, I got a couple lasers over at St. Francis Yacht Club. Let's go over sailing. And this would be our opportunity to get our colleague Todd Harris, who'd never sailed before, out on the water. What do you think? And Ken said, well, I'll go right after you. Well, about 10 minutes later, Tracy Usher, the president of the laser class, sent me an email. Okay, Gary, we got boats lined up for you. And Tom Slingsby's going to come sail. Gold medalist. So my only answer was, well, can you get a foiling laser for me?
Well, Gary, I think you forgot, when you said that, I think you wanted to take on several of the sailors from the teams. I very quickly looked at my license and saw my age and realized this was a really bad idea.
Really bad idea.
Clearly you haven't looked at your license recently, Gary, when you're going to take on Tom Slingsby.
But I will say, Ken, it was great fun, and when the U.S. was down, I think it was 7-1 at one point, and you and I are sitting there before going on the air. Boy, could they possibly make a comeback, and it'd be a great story, and day after day. I mean, they elongated it, but it was really great fun, and I really enjoyed commentating with you, and we'll see what happens next. So with that, thank you, Ken. Good work. Kenny Reed.
Thank you, Gary.